Hello everyone, and welcome to Doublebit's Workshop. So I do apologize if you hear a little bit of a grumble in my throat still. I'm getting over that fun being a little sick there that I had from last week, which is why there wasn't an episode. So I felt like I wanted to get a video out to you guys, so do bear with me, but I am sounding a little grumbly still. Alright, so in today's video we'll be reviewing the hot knife, the heavy-duty hot knife from good old Chicago Electric, which is the brand, or house brand essentially, for Harbor Freight still. It's one of the tried and true brands that they've held on to. They've adapted and changed and gotten a couple different brands such as, Bauer, Warrior, a couple other different ones. But this one still holds on to a few of their main kind of staple tools. Alright, so what you get in the box pretty much is, this is what the box will look like for you. Kind of move around a little so you can see there. And inside of it, we have the tool itself, and then we have instruction manual here for you. It is a owner's manual and safety instructions. So looking through it, there you have here, it gives you some good information about amperages, different things for basic understanding for your breakers and such. This doesn't like having cheater prongs put on it. It is a 3-prong, so trying to adapt it down to a 2-prong to use on an older style outlet will actually cause potential issues for the unit in properly working or potentially shorting out. So try not to do that if you can. I know sometimes house wiring is a pain and a lot of our houses aren't always up to date on that. Other than that, it gives you a rundown on just making sure that your area is nice and safe, that there's not a open can of gasoline sitting nearby and then you're going to be putting a heat source near it. Some of this is very simplistic, but it is worth a read through just to see if there's a few things you might not have necessarily thought about safety wise. Besides that, on the tool itself, it has a nice 2 little guides so you can loosen these and adjust to your actual depth of cut. I've tightened the crap out of these to give myself the full length. The main reason I left my cage on, even though I didn't really use it much, without actually needing to know what depth I was cutting at, is that this actually works great. I just laid a piece of wood down, and then when you rest it on that side, it actually leaves a good distance between the blade and your actual table. So that's what I ended up using this for more than everything, or anything, was having the ability to let it rest without it actually touching anything. So on your actual tool, besides having your depth gauge, you also have a dial on top here through 1 through 5. So on there, that just basically judges on how exactly hot this will get. It's a plus 800 degrees is what they say on the top end potential, and it does get quite hot. It has a momentary switch underneath for hold down, turns it on, let go, it turns off. This is electric, so once there is no longer current, there's no worry of a heat source consistent. There has been some other hot knives that I have seen on job sites in the past that run off of like propane and stuff, and those are nice, great, works in the moment, but they stay hot a lot longer, so they become kind of a hindrance in regards to where when you are done with your work, you set the tool down, it's cooling for about a good 15-20 minutes before you can actually like put it away or anything else, otherwise this thing will continue to burn with whatever it touches. So this version, being electric, actually cools down to the touch pretty darn quick, which is nice, but also kind of a problem a little bit, because you hold the switch, it takes about roughly 30 seconds, and if you're in a nice ambient warm environment. If you're in a freezing cold garage, it'll take longer to warm up. So just kind of keep that in mind. This is a piece of metal getting hot, so if you're in a freezing cold environment, metal is going to stay cold until it becomes hot. But then in that same regard, it's going to cool down faster if your environment's colder as well. So kind of keep that in mind. So the number one gripe that everyone has with these is that there is only a momentary switch on the bottom. So alternatively, there's a couple different things you can do. There are some zip ties that you can use and just zip tie it to a certain position that holds it in, and then just pop it off and then slide the zip tie back up on top. People use rubber bands to hold this down if they're working on a project consistently and they have some kind of holder they've rigged up, or they leave this depth on there, little depth gauge guy, so that way it can rest but be still able to leave distance between the table, and it would still stay hot for them to immediately grab and use. So there is a couple things like that that'll kind of help with the momentary switch, but it is definitely a safety thing for these tools in general. There was a few recalls on them in the past that had the on-off switch to where the on-off switch broke and it just stayed on. It doesn't always have the potential to break in the off position, so because of that, they only allow a momentary switch when they produce these now. And that's just more or less them covering their butts for a prior issue they had in the past. So kind of just want to let you know on that one, because it seems to be one of the main things a lot of people complain about with this tool. Operational, this is a 120 volt tool, so make sure that your outlet's up to code for 120. And you're not trying to plug this into something like a 220 outlet or anything like that. You're not going to necessarily pull more juice out of it because the tool is not rated for that. You'll do more damage to the tool than you would anything else. So keep that in mind. That being said, there are a few tools that will gloat that they can go into the higher voltage range if you do have a 220 hookup that can take them. So in some cases, those tools can do it. This one is not rated for that. Its peak use does say 130 volts, and that just kind of gives it that flex capability. So when you initially turn it on, it'll kind of spike and heat up quickly and have a little bit closer to 130, and then it drops down and levels at 120. So the tool itself will actually peak a little bit. If you have a lot of lighting and everything all in one circuit, when you pull the trigger, you will notice your lights dim. That happened to me a couple of times, but my breakers I made sure are very strong, and I don't have any weak 10 amp breakers in my house anywhere. They're all 15 and above, which is nice. So everything in my house is rated to be able to run a proper 120 circuit without any issues. The most I'll get is a light will dim on me a little bit because of this tool being in use. That being said, as far as the main uses in the construction field, if you are doing insulation board for a garage door and you have that foam, this stuff is an absolute dream. You lay it up against your actual where it needs to go, figure out approximately where you need, and then heat it up, wait 30 seconds, this will just cut through it. And it is essentially a hot knife. It'll cut through it like butter. And it is great for that. Other projects will include if you are doing any kind of reupholstery work, if you're working on redoing a chair and you want to cut that foam for the chair, this will do that job as well. Cut it great. All these will kind of generate an odd kind of smell and a little bit of an odd kind of chemical, so be sure and kind of have just some circulation when you're cutting with this. It's not going to be the best fumes because you are breathing in whatever chemical is created from melting whatever you are trying to cut for foam wise. And that's not necessarily, you could say, EPA certified when you're creating those, so just kind of be wary. Either wear a respirator or have just some kind of open ventilation while doing so. So that way you're not in a tiny little cramped room in your house off in the corner with a space heater on. It's the middle of winter and you're trying to get some crafts done and you're trying not to kill yourself. You need to have some ventilation. The purposes that I've purchased this for was for cutting EVA foam, which is this. It's a high density foam. And reason being is I wanted to make the jacket from Cyberpunk. So this whole top is actual EVA foam. It's not quite finished, but what I did on this is I cut the foam, I cut additional pieces to go on the outside rim of this, so that way I could have LEDs on the inside in and throughout. And then I also purchased a heat gun to form the outside of this, because this high density foam actually reacts great. When you heat it, you can actually melt it and kind of bend it into what you need it to be. So that was my purpose for purchasing the knife finally. And it worked out amazing, and I'm not quite done yet with it. but I am happy so far with this progress. I have made this whole jacket from scratch. I just didn't like a lot of the ones that they had out there, and most of them started around $200 and went up, which was ridiculous to me. And a lot of that stuff just was the cheapest China-made crap that I did not want to even touch with a 10-foot pole, let alone for well over $200. It was bad quality, just didn't look right, and improper, didn't look to the game. So this has been a work in progress. It's not done, but it has been a joy going through sewing all this up. I 3D printed the bumpers, and yeah, it'll eventually be done. It's got the LEDs and everything that turn on the inside, which is pretty nice and neat as well. So one of the other things, I got this for 20 bucks. These will also change in price and range a little bit as well, depending on the current deals. Sadly, we saw with 2021 that most of Harbor Freight does not have its notorious 20% off coupon and a lot of the other wonderful coupons. A lot of it seems to be inside track only kind of stuff. And this can sometimes go as cheap as $10, but on average you'll be around $20 is what this looks like this will be at. And for that money, for what you get, I would say this is a wonderful tool. It is definitely stout. It feels good in the hand. It doesn't feel super chintzy. I had no issues with any heat transference going into the handle whatsoever. The actual control module and everything up here didn't seem to get super hot. That was one of my concerns, is that after a while of use, I didn't know how much of this heat was going to go back into the handle and feel like the thing was going to melt apart in my hand, and it never did. I used the thing on and off consistent for hours for a couple of days straight, and had no issues just cutting and making this nice collar piece here. And I would be not surprised whatsoever to see this thing work great in a job site. I would see no issues with it at all. Everything has stayed nice and strong and tight for me. If you were to, you could also remove these two little nuts right here, and this whole cage comes off. So if you have no need for that, and you're just making straight cuts, quick cuts, and you're on a job site, that's something you can definitely do, is you can remove this cage, which is nice. If you were consistently wanting to cut a certain depth into your actual, foam boards, insulator board, anything like that, insulation board, then you're more than capable to take that off, make all your cuts. And oh yes, the technical maximum is on the actual little tag right here. It's 840 degrees Fahrenheit is what it says that this is rated at its top maximum. But to give the final rundown on it, I would say for someone in construction, if you're working with insulation, or if you're working with garage doors, or any of those kind of applications, this is definitely a great and valuable tool in that regard. If you want to, there is a few different ways to modify or just create a little item that holds this momentary switch down for you. Not too hard. If you're savvy whatsoever in a construction setting, you'll come up with something to make that work a little bit more consistent if you wanted it to. For someone in my regard, I feel like the home crafter, where you're just going to be creating all sorts of random things, this is a great tool to add to the tool chest for working with a variety of different things. And I've looked at working with EVA foam, and I knew that as soon as I got into playing around with it more, I would have a few additional tool purchases. One, of course, being the hot knife. I also purchased the Warrior heat gun, and that purchase has been awesome. I love that thing. It gets super hot. I'll also do a review on that one as well, just to kind of give you an idea exactly how that works, and how much I'm enjoying it, and my purposes and uses for it as well. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it gave you a little bit more of a up-to-date look at the Chicago Electric heavy-duty hot knife. This one, on the box it says it cuts foam, EIFS, ICF, nylon rope, webbing, synthetic fabric, and plastic. And yes, it is a wonderful tool for working with anything on the more plastics variety, and also foams. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Be sure and hit like and subscribe. And thank you all so very much for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day.